that Allah's book called the Qur'an, that was the revelation He gave to the Prophet and it's closed. The greatest revelation of Allah is the divine reality that has been there for countless millennium, that humans could have done nothing to bring into existence and can do nothing to change these divine laws. And the Qur'an is in synchrony with all of that. And that is why you and I should understand, when we are reading, when we are revising, when we are reviewing, when we are reflecting, when we are considering what was told to people before us and what is told to us, we shouldn't expect something mystical. The guidelines, the expectation to live a certain standard of life has been absolute and universal. So the Qur'an says, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ آمِنُوا بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ. And the word here is not to believe. It's not believe. Belief with people becomes a cheap expression. If you want an English word close to that, be convinced. Be convinced. Develop the conviction. Develop the relationship where you do not express any doubt, any qualms, any double standards. Develop that relationship with divine guidance, where your life represents and transforms resoluteness. So there's no doubt, there's no place for doubt. And as I said last week, if you look at Muslims generally speaking, what do you see in us? You see that we have very little relationship with the Qur'an. 9 out of 10 adults have no plan. They don't belong to any organized course of learning the Qur'an. 9 out of 10 adults can hardly read the Qur'an. 9 out of 10 adults can hardly understand 9 out of 10 things that are said in the Qur'an. 9 out of 10 adults have not realized that if they do not start learning the Qur'an, it is very difficult to influence their children and to be very supportive of their children and to be engaged with their children and to give leadership capability to their children. Because learning the Qur'an has been limited to prattling some form of Arabic. It did not involve analytical approach to its text. That's why we are stuck with religion, which has not been able to help the people who have been holding on to it and whose forefathers have been holding on to it and whose children still masquerade with the identifications of it but hardly reflect its values and leadership in their own lives, much less society. So when the Qur'an says, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ آمِنُوا بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ, قَالُوا نُؤْمِنُ بِمَا أُنزِلَ عَلَيْنَا. They said, we will develop Iman, we will secure that, we are convinced of that, whatever has come to us. And this is open to such a broad spectrum of understanding. وَيَكْفُرُونَ بِمَا وَرَاءَ. If you look at the world community today, there's a serious issue. You take politics, you take economics, you take sociology, you take education, you take the institutions of life, you take this thing called religion. there is something that pops out from these disciplines and people. You don't see any political system that focuses on humanity at all. You don't see that. The democracy of the West, that the West boasts of, does not focus on the world. You look at the economic system of the developed nations, so they like to be called, right? Or the industrialized nation. It has no response to the economic disparity, inequities, stagnation of the poorer nations, the third world, or let us put it in a nice way, the underdeveloped, but that may be a bad word, or the developing nations. The main thing what you see here is a marginalized, is a limited, is a prejudice, is a one-sided vision of these disciplines. And people are very, very comfortable with that. And this concept trickles down to their people in society. Now and then when there is a disaster, some people respond, which is a positive thing. But responding to a disaster without realizing that life on a daily basis is actually lived in disasters created by human beings who have a prejudiced vision of life. And that's what the Qur'an is telling you and me here. That unless you and me can really align ourselves with divine, we will be marginalized, we will be left out, we will be sidelined, we will not be part of the equation, and we too more than likely will do the same thing when we have the opportunity to rule and administer. It's only human beings who have made divine loftiness their epoch-making values of life that you can see in the way they live their lives, in the way they speak, in the things they work for, in the way they touch human beings. You can see in them that they are people with a universal presence. They have a universal presence. They are not marginalized mentally. That means they do not accept marginalization of people. They do not see people by the different pigmentation and set up barriers. They do not see people under the name of religion and start setting up abodes for them. Oh, you are going to paradise, but that one is going to go to hell. They do not see people by different economic status and therefore treat them varyingly. What they see people as, they see all people as people. And that's the benefit of actually grabbing on to divine loftiness. Whether that divine loftiness was there before you and me, or that divine loftiness came to our realization while we are existing. And that's what the Qur'an is telling us about. The Qur'an is a book of human behavior, divine in its nature, and wants us to acknowledge the realities that were there before us, that we could learn positively from the mistakes of others, and that we can learn positively from the good habits of others. And if we were to put all of this into our lives, then hopefully we stand a better chance of achieving greater happiness, greater success. Not only for ourselves, which we must always work for, but for society at large. The Qur'an tells us that there are people who are actively involved